Star Wars Crosscurrent by Paul S. Kemp. Chapter 3 The Past, 5,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. Raylan started to lose forward momentum the instant he leapt clear of the airlock. He activated the magnetic grips in his gloves and boots as he fell. Time seemed to slow as he plummeted toward the transport, and an image of the transport against the background of stars burned itself into his memory. Remaining focused, holding the ship in his telekinetic grasp, he steered his descent and reeled himself in. He could not afford to slow himself with the force, and he hit the surface of the ship hard, thumping his helmet on the hull and for a moment scrambling the HUD. The transport lurched the moment he lit, and the sudden shift in momentum nearly threw him. He cursed and grabbed the protuberances nearest to hand. The force in his magnetic grips kept him anchored. For an instant he feared a scan by the transport crew had detected his presence, but the ship had swerved left and down, probably an evasive maneuver in response to the detection of the infiltrator. Drev would be under pressure soon. Rellin had to move fast. He hung onto the transport as it sped toward the dreadnoughts. Harbinger and Omen had long, sleek bodies dotted everywhere with batteries of rotating laser cannon turrets, typically used for ship-to-ship combat. As he watched, the cannons rotated in the direction of the infiltrator, but they would have difficulty getting a fix on the small, stealth-equipped starfighter. In moments, a rapid reaction squad of Sith fighters, like flying knives, streaked from the bay. Incoming, he said to Drev over the encrypted channel, 10 Blade-class fighters. Stay among the smaller craft and the dreadnoughts will not fire. He glared back, but could not see Drev and the infiltrator. Could see only the dark side of Phagon 3, a handful of the transport shuttles going evasive, and the floating rock of the dead moon. He returned his gaze to the dreadnoughts and focused on his mission. The transport was making for Harbinger. Interior lights from observation decks and viewports flickered here and there along Harbinger's and Omen's lengths. In shape, the dreadnoughts reminded Rellin of gigantic land varrocs, the bladed polearm favored by the Sith. The tumors of bubble-shaped escape pods lined the spine that connected the forward bridge section to the aft engine and launching bay sections. Like most Jedi, he'd studied the available schematics of Sith starships. He knew their layout, and he knew where he was going once he got aboard. The transport straightened its course, descended a bit, and headed for the bay. Rowan estimated the time of arrival, removed 3 of the mag grenades from his flex suit, and crawled along the transport as fast as he dared until he reached the housing for the engine nacelles. He stuck all 3 charges to one of the nacelles and waited. The moment the transport cleared the landing bay's shielding and started to slow, he activated them, put them on a 10-second timer, and began counting down his head. 2 more blades sped past him and out of the ship. 10, 9. He worried for Jeff. His Padawan was an extraordinary pilot, but the sky would be thick with Sith fighters. Raylan would have to be fast. 8, 7. The activity in the landing bay gave it the appearance of an Asen hive. Pilots in full gear were carted in levs to their blades. Droids wheeled and walked here and there. Organics and machines unloaded open transports and loaded what looked like raw ore into lev pallets. The sight of the ore, the greasy feel of it, made Rellin queasy. He remembered a moment years before when he and Sace, then still a Jedi, had happened upon a crystal that enhanced the dark side user's connection with the Force. He shuffled through his memory until he recalled the name of the ore. Lignin. The feel of it was the same. It had to be the same material. He had never imagined there could be so much. A female voice in the loudspeaker announced commands. Cargo droid team, forward to landing bay, 163B. Rellin reached out with the force and felt the mines around him as the transport settled into a landing bay and powered down its engines. Autoclamp secured its skids and gases vented with a hiss. Rellin discerned 10 or so beings nearby, none a force user, all weak-minded. 5, 4. Using the force, he entered their minds and erased himself from their perception. 3, 2. He leapt from the ship, hit the floor in a roll, found his feet, and ran. Augmenting his speed with the force, he covered 100 meters in the tick of a chrono. 0. Behind him, the mag grenades blossomed into a cloud of flame and heat. The secondary explosion from one or both of the transport's other engines rocked the landing bay. The concussion wave nearly knocked him from his feet. Shards of metal, chunks of flesh, screams, and sparkling motes of the transported ore peppered the area. The presence of the ore in its naked form made his stomach churn, and he took care as best as he could to touch none of the particulates. An alarm screeched, and the crew near the wreckage, scrambled for the firefighting gear. A medical droid wheeled past Rellin. "Firefighting team to main landing bay," announced the female voice. Ears ringing, Rellin hurried down the corridor into the direction of the hyperdrive chamber. He had flipped back his helmet, letting it hang by the hinge at the rear of the suit's neck, and put the helmet's removable comlink in his ear. A firefighting team, several curious crew members, and 3 towering red-skinned Masasi in security uniforms stormed past him at intervals. He used the force to defect their perception as he hurried along. The interior of the ship reflected the mindset of its Sith builders, all hard edges, sharp corners, and pure functionality, with no allowance for comfort or aesthetics. The sound of the alarm grew fainter, and he allowed himself to feel a small sense of relief. He reached an intersection and paused for a moment to gather his bearings. He shuffled through the cards of his memory, recalling the direction of the hyperdrive chamber. Left, and not far. A hatch to his left slid open to reveal the muscular, vaguely reptilian form of a Masasi warrior in the deep black uniform and epaulets of security personnel. A land varrock hung across his back, a blaster on the trunk of his thigh. Bone quills poked from his knuckles. Metal ornaments pierced his wide nose and small ears. Studs had been implanted underneath the red skin of his forearms, biceps, and hairless scalp. The Masasi's eyes fixed on Rellin before he could use the force to blind his perception. The tentacles of the Masasi's beard quivered over his broad, toothy mouth. A vein in his temple visibly throbbed. "We need assistance in the landing bay," Rellin said. Something went wrong with the Masasi took in Rellin's flex suit, the lack of a uniform. His yellow eyes narrowed, his clawed hand clutched the hilt of his Lamvarok, pulled it free. The large polearm could be spun by a wheeler to release the sharpened metal disc mounted on its haft, or the jagged blade end could serve as an axe. A crude weapon, but dangerous. "Who is your superior?" the Masasi asked, his voice as guttural as the comm static. The Masasi put the point of the Lamvarok on Rellin's chest and pushed him up against the wall. Rellin understood then how things would go. He looked up and down the corridor, saw no one. With his free hand, the Masasi pinched the comlink on his collar. "This is Drofan, Security Detail 5. I have My superior is Mehmet Nadil," Rellin said. "Go ahead, Drofan," said the voice in the comlink. But Rellin's words had creased the Masasi's forehead, and his fingers released the comlink. "Meru who? I do not know that name. He is a Jedi Master on Kirak." "A Jedi what? Say again, Drofan. Your transmission fell off. Say again." Rellin's words finally penetrated the Masasi's armor of incredulity, and his yellow eyes widened. He leaned into his Lamvarok as his hand went for his blaster. Rellin projected a telekinetic blast from his palm, pushed the Masasi across the corridor, and slammed him against the wall. The impact summoned a gasp of pain and sent the blaster to the floor. The Masasi ignored it, growled, and lunged for Rellin with the Lamvarok. Rellin ignited his lightsaber, and the green blade met red flesh, severing an arm on the crosscut, then the head on the backswing. The Masasi's corpse fell at Rellin's feet. "Report, Drofan," said the voice in the Masasi's comlink. Rellin saw no point in hiding the body. They would know he was aboard soon enough. Deactivating his lightsaber, he sprinted down the hall. He decided to risk a communication. "Drev? It's sick out here, Master, but I'm holding." Rellin heard the tension in his Padawan's voice. The rumble of a near miss carried through the connection, along with Jev's grunt. "It's about to get thick in here, too," Rellin said. "Not much longer. Rely on the Force, Jev, and hang on." Say stalked the bridge, the susurrant rush of his robes loud in the quiet. None of the crew met his eyes. On the view screen, the Jedi infiltrator weaved and darted through space, upward of 12 blades in pursuit. Laser fire crisscrossed the screen, a net of glowing lines. Frustrated comm chatter from the blade pilots carried over the bridge speakers. Sace used the dark side to probe the infiltrator pilot's connection to the Force and found him more of a potential than fully realized Force user, though he was an extraordinarily intuitive pilot. He could not be alone. As Sace watched, blades came at the infiltrator from two sides, and in the bottom, a clawed encirclement. They have him now, muttered the junior officer. The Jedi cut hard to the left and engaged the booster, blasting one of the blades from space as he did so, and gained some separation from the rest. Soft curses sounded from the bridge. He's heading for another transport, Dor observed. The infiltrator wheeled around, and the transport pilot took evasive maneuvers, but it was far too little. The infiltrator's laser spat energy. The transport and its ore turned to dust. Sace's anger grew. He cannot afford to lose any of his ore. Out of habit, he tapped his forefinger on the point of one of his jaw horns. Intensify scanning and system, Dor ordered the helm. This Jedi cannot be alone. More will be coming. Yes, Colonel. Sace ground his fangs as the infiltrator weaved out of another trap laid for him by the blades. He glared at the weapons officer, a human male with gray at his temples and concern in his eyes. Can you get a lock? No, Captain. The ship has some kind of sensor scrambler. We could blanket an area and bring him down even without a lock, but he's too near our ships. Sace nodded. Prepare a firing solution to provide a safe corridor for the transports. Transmit it to the Blade's navicoms to keep them clear. Yes, Captain. Sace turned the door. End planetside operations. Order every transport back to the Harbinger and Omen. A firing corridor will be provided for them. Yes, Captain, said Dor with a nod, and began transmitting the orders. Firing solution ready, sir, said the weapons officer. Fire, Sace said. Harbinger's laser cannons put a certain of flames in space, dividing the infiltrator and the blades from the transports. The transports took immediate advantage and sped for the landing bays. As soon as the transports are aboard, recall the blades, Sace said to Dor. To his weapons officer, he said, Then you'll blow him from space. What? Dor said, and the exclamation turned heads on the bridge. For a moment, Sace thought Dor to be questioning his order, but he soon saw otherwise. The colonel tilted his head into his earpiece. As he listened, his skin turned a deeper red, and his tentacle beard quivered with anger. Double security around all sensitive areas. Establish search teams and comb the ship. Dor out. What is it? Sace asked. Dor's head twitched as he leaned close to Sace and spoke in a low tone. The body of a security guard was found in the corridor off the landing bay. His arm and head were severed. It appears to have been the work of a lightsaber. Adrenaline fueled Sace's pheromones, increasing their odor. A lightsaber, he muttered to himself, and the explosion in the bay was not an engine malfunction. It appears not. We have a Jedi aboard. A murmur went through the bridge crew, the smell of their sweat sweetened with excitement. Dor tapped his palm on his hilt of his Lamverock he wore even on bridge duty. If these Jedi are a vanguard for a larger force, Sace nodded. He could not take the chance. Sadao would be displeased with the delay in the delivery of the lignin. To the helmsman, he said, Move us out of the planet's gravity well and prepare the ship for hyperspace. Plot a route to Primus Golud, and jump as soon as all our ships are back aboard. To Dor, he said, You have the bridge. Dor nodded. Yes, sir. What are you going to do? Sace put his hand on the hilt of his lightsaber. I am going to retrieve my mask and find our stowaway. A captured Jedi would make a nice gift to accompany the lignin for Master Sadao. Relin felt his mental fingers for his one-time Padawan and knew that the dead Masasi's body had been found. Sace was searching for him. Relin resisted the impulse to lower his mental screen and reveal himself. He needed to accomplish his mission, not correct a past wrong. He hurried through a maze of corridors, using the Force on groups of 2 or 3 crew to remove himself from their perception. The crew of the Harbinger was on alert, searching for him, and Relin found it increasingly taxing to render himself hidden from them. Ahead, he heard the heavy tread of boots and the booming bass voices of several Masasi. From the sound of it, he put their numbers at 6 or 7. Given their alert status and attunement to the dark side, he would not be able to use the Force to hide from them. He checked one of the nearby hatches, found it locked, checked another, and that locked too. The voices drew closer. He could not make out their words. They were speaking their native language. He pulled an overrider, an electronic lockpick, from his suit and attached it to the nearest door's control panel. Lights flashed as the equipment interfaced with the overrider tried to find the door's open code. The Masasi were around the corner. Rel would not get clear in time. He took his lightsaber in hand and ignited it. The Masasi fell silent. They must have heard him activate his lightsaber. The overrider flashed green and the door opened with a metallic hiss. Moving quickly, he detached the corridor and slid inside as the Masasi rounded the corner. A meeting room, a large table surrounded by chairs and dotted with 3 comp stations sat centermost. A vid screen, powered down, took up one wall. Transparent steel windows made up the bulkhead, allowing a view of the system outside. He crouched with his ear to the door, listening to the voices of the Masasi. They sounded like they were right outside, separated from him only by a thin layer of metal, talking in hushed tones. He winced as his comlink activated and Joe spoke. The transports are returning to the landing bay and both dreadnoughts are moving, Master. Rowan heard laser fire in the background of Joe's transmission, but his mind was on the Masasi in the corridor outside. Stand by, he whispered. Stand by. The voices outside went silent. Had they heard Jev? A human would not have been able to hear the comlink transmission, but Masasi had keener senses than humans. Rowan sat behind the door, lightsaber humming in his hand, the calm of the Force in his heart, waiting. Nothing. He glanced back out the meeting room windows to see the background of stars shifting slightly as the ship moved away from Phagon 3 and its gravity well. They are preparing to jump, he said to Drev. He had to get out of the hyperdrive, and now. Get off that ship, Master, or you'll go with them. There is still time. He pushed the button to open the hatch. I'm near the hyperdrive chamber. And he found himself staring at the uniformed chest of a Masasi security officer who held his Landrock in one hand. The bone spurs and studs on the Masasi's red flesh gave a tumorous appearance. Here, the Masasi shouted down the hall. Roaring, he swung his Landrock in a downstroke for Rellen's head, but Rellen sidestepped the blow and it slammed into the deck while Rellen drove his lightsaber through the Masasi's abdomen. The Masasi groaned, dropped his weapon. His clawed hands groped reflexively for Rellen's throat as he died. Shouts from down the hall told Rellen the dead Masasi's comrades had heard his call. He took a thermal grenade from his flex suit, stepped out of the room, and tossed it down the corridor of the onrushing Masasi, each with a blaster and Landrock bare. Recognition of what he had thrown widened their eyes as they dived for cover, but not before one of them got off a blaster shot. Rowan deflected it with the lightsaber and ducked back into the room he had vacated as a grenade exploded. Flames bathed the corridor in orange. The Masasi's screams were lost in the explosion, and the shock wave rattled Rellen's teeth. Alarms shrieked, and fire foam hissed out of valves in the ceiling. Rowan heard shouts from other direction and the stomp of many boots. The ship's entire security force would be coming. As with Sace, he had to move. He drew his blaster off with his offhand and pelted down the hall, past the bodies of the Masasi, toward the hyperdrive chamber. The time for stealth was past. A pair of Masasi appeared in the hallway before him, both with blasters drawn. Before they could shoot, Rowland dropped with one with a shot from his own blaster, opening a smoking hole in the Masasi's black uniform and sending the insignia of rank on his chest skittering across the floor. The second Masasi fired the blaster rapidly while shouting for aid and backing away. Rowan closed the distance, reflecting the blaster shots with his lightsaber as he ran, leaving a trail of scorch marks in his wake along the wall and ceiling. At 5 paces, the Masasi tried to draw his Landrock, and Rowan lunged forward, and was upon him too fast. The clean hum of his lightsaber gave way to a muffled sizzle as he cut Masasi in two. He could not slow. Shouts told him that pursuit was right behind him. Alarms were sounding all over the ship. When he reached a thick blast door, an idea struck him and he drove his lightsaber's tip into the control panel. The circuitry expired with smoke and sparks, and the blast door descended with a boom. He assumed his pursuers would be able to go descended from with the boom. He assumed his pursuers would be able to go around, but it might buy him a few extra moments. Drawing on the force, he enhanced his speed and ran in a blur for the hyperdrive chamber. The young helmsman did not look up from his screen as he spoke to Door. Colonel, we are clear of the gravity well. System scans show no additional Jedi ships. Door nodded. Begin the jump sequence. As the helmsman obeyed, the weapon officer said, All blades are returned to the ship. Colonel Door. Blades heard the question, hiding behind the comment. The infiltrator remains in range? Yes, Colonel. Door stroked his tentacles of his beard. You know, and you have until we jump to destroy it. The helm recited the jump sequence countdown. The weapon officer gave the order and the gun's crew to fire at will. 8 Misasi warriors armed with blaster rifles and Lamberocks loitered in the large open room adjacent to the hyperdrive chamber. The quills, lumps, and scars that scored their red flesh made them look deformed. Rowan slowed only long enough to count their numbers and ensure there were no others. He did not bother to hide himself. They were too alert for that. They saw him, pointed, showed their teeth in a growl. 6 pulled their blaster rifles from their shoulders to fire while another spoke into his comlink, and the last headed for a wall-mounted alarm. Without breaking a stride, Rowan held up a hand, took telekinetic hold of the blaster rifles, aimed at him, ripped them from the Misasi's hands, and flung them across the large chamber. One fired when they hit the deck. The shot below the booted foot from one of the Misasi. The shot blew the booted foot from one of the Misasi. He fell to the floor, cursing in his language, the ruins of his ankle leaking black fluid. Rowan fired his blaster and put a fist-sized hole in the back of the skull of a Misasi about to push the wall alarm. Black blood and brain matter splattered the wall, and the body slid to the floor. Run, he said to the remaining Misasi. The 6 still standing grinned mouthfuls of sharp teeth, the teeth of predators, and drew their Lamberocks, spun them with skill until they hummed. Rowan knew what was coming next. He would have to take care that his suit did not get damaged. As one, the Misasi jerked back on their Lamberocks. A shower of the sharpened disc attached to the haft, each a few centimeters across, sprayed at Rowan. Ready for it, he used the force to augment an upward leap over the projectiles and reached almost all the way to the ceiling. 10 meters up, all but one of the discs flew harmlessly under him. The last scored his forearm, but was little more than a scratch, and it did not seem to penetrate his suit. He landed in a crouch, lightsaber blazing. I said, run. The largest said, We are 6 to your 1, Jedi, with more coming. Rowan tilted his head, holstered his blaster, and took his lightsaber in both hands. Through the large double doors behind the Misasi, Rowan heard the hyperdrive hum with pre-jump preparation. Pressure built on his eardrums. The hairs on his arms stood on end. He had no time to waste. You will be fewer than 6 in a moment. Flee now. Final chance. They lost their smiles, but not their fire, and charged him for a loose arc, roaring. He charged them in silence, focused, the force surging through his muscles. When he closed to 2 paces, he bounded over them, flipping in midair and decapitating one as he landed behind their line. By the time they spun to face him, he'd put his lightsaber through a second. Sidestepping the downward slash of a Lamberock from a third Misasi, he cut the metal weapon in half, ducking under a crosscut from another, and severed both legs of the nearest Misasi. He backflipped out of range, the screams of the dying loud in his ears. The large Misasi put his Lamberock in the skull of the other whose legs Rowan had severed, ending the screams. Then all 3 remaining snarled in charge. Rowan threw his lightsaber at the first, impaling him through the neck. Surprise slowed the others a moment, and Rowan took advantage of the reprieve to use the force to pull his weapon back into his hands. They licked their fangs, bounced on their feet, and charged anew. He met their advance with his own, ducking, spinning, wheeling, slashing, killing. They could not match his speed, his skill, and within a 5 count, pieces of the Misasi and their weapons dotted the bloody deck. All were dead but one wounded on the floor on the foot by the blaster. You must gift me with death too, Jedi, the wounded Masasi snarled. This, he gestured his wounded foot, I'll be as a child. Rowan stared at him with contempt. He knew that Masasi had been bred as warriors, but their carelessness with their own lives sickened him. We all live with ourselves. Not like this. Kill me. I demand it. The Masasi crawled towards the blaster rifle, leaving a line of smeared blood in his wake. As you'll have it then, Rowan said, and put a blaster shot in his skull. Deactivating his lightsaber, still centered in the calm of the Force, he turned to the doors. Body and mind tingled with fatigue, but he endured. Behind the door, energy gathered around the hyperdrive. He could feel the change in the air. The dreadnoughts would jump soon. He would not be able to stop Omen, but at least he could stop Harbinger. He slipped the overrider over the control panel and hoped it would work quickly. Lights and beeps signified the beginning of the cryptographic holochess match. Rowan could do nothing but wait. Despite the urgency of the moment, he put his back on the door, sat cross-legged on the floor, stared out over a chamber of dead Masasi, and held his calm. Several corridors opened into the chamber, and Rowan heard shouts down two of them. They were coming. The realization did not disturb his calm. Taking comfort in his relationship with the Force, he held the hilt of his lightsaber in his hand, felt the coolness of its metal, studied its lines, recalling its making. A long beat signaled the Overrider's victory. Checkmate, Rowan said, standing. The hyperdrive chamber's doors parted. Dry, warm air swarmed out. The gathering energy in the chamber created extreme static electricity. Rowan's hair stood on end. Insects seemed to crawl over his flesh. His robes clung to him as if trying to prevent him from entering. The rectangular metal block of the hyperdrive hung in the center of the room. From ceiling mounts and series of power conduits as thick as Rowan's arm. A large dish-shaped concavity in the floor yawned underneath it, the open mouth into which the drive fed its power. Circuitry crisscrossed the hyperdrive's face, a circulatory system of interstellar travel. A transparent steel window on the far side of the chamber opened into an adjoining room. A pair of wide-eyed human engineers in the black uniforms of Sadow's forces pointed at him, shouted something, and reached frantically for their communicators. Rowan used a telekinetic blast to slam both men against the far wall as they slumped to the floor, out of sight. Rowan had seen a hyperdrive bisected once for engineers to study. The complexity of the circuitry, the odd geometry of its inner workings, had left it nauseous, and now the complexity, the geometry began to do its work. Machinery clicked, connected, turned. The power conduits squirmed like snakes as more energy coursed through them. The hum increased in volume. Rowan felt lightheaded. Radiation filled the room, he knew. He would need treatment for the radiation poisoning if he survived. If. He placed a hand on the hyperdrive. The metal felt warm, as slick as talc. It pulsed like a living thing, seeming to shift, to flow under his touch. A headache rooted in his left temple, intensified. His stomach flirted with nausea. He removed 3 of his mag grenades from the pocket of his flex suit, attached 2 of them to the face of the hyperdrive, the third to the main power conduit connection. He checked his chrono to mark the time and rapidly set the timers. The grenades began ticking away the remaining moments of Harbinger's existence. He turned for the door, activating the communicator. Charges are set. Heading out now, Drev. Understood. The blades have cleared out. Perhaps I have frightened them. Rowan had the beginning of a smile in his tone. Drev went on. I am alone, I hear. Well, except for the 2 hulking dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. Rowan stood amid the Masasi he had slaughtered. Jump out of the system. With the ship clear, the cannons may fire. They're preparing for a jump, Master. They won't risk firing. They may. Jump out, Drev. I am not leaving you. Jump, Drev. That is an order. No. Rowan cocked his head. No. I am not leaving, Master. Both ships are in jump prep. Neither will risk firing. Roland shook his head, incredulous at his Padawan stand. You are leaving Harbinger. Will not be able to jump, but Omen will. There's nothing we can do about that now. but we can warn Odon Ur and Mernit Nadil about the ore and what it can do. That is your task. No, I won't. We go together or not at all. Raylan lost his calm for the first time since coming aboard the Dreadnought. You will do it and do it now. That is your direct order. You're breaking out, Master. Blast it, Drev. You heard. Understood, Master. I will get in close, scrape the surface of the ship. The laser cannons from Omen will not be able to engage me there. And for Harbinger, it will be like using a club to swat a fly. Get to an escape pod and we'll dock. Out. And they won't fire anyway. Out again. The link went quiet. Drev? Drev? His Padawan did not respond. Blast! You have a way of losing your Padawan, said a coarse voice behind him, a voice that Rowan still heard in the quiet, solitary moments of his life when he had only his failures to come for company. Sace. The word came out a curse, and Rowan accompanied its pronunciation with the sizzling sound that came with activation of his lightsaber. The Sith entered from the same corridor Rowan had used. He wore the loose browns and blacks favored by darkside users. The red blade of his lightsaber filled the space between them. His scaly, reddish-brown skin was the color of blood. He strode among the scattered Masasi parts that littered the bloody floor of the chamber, his eye ridge cocked, a sneer curling his lip over one of the small horns that jutted from the side of his jaw. His long hair, bound into a rope with bone circlets, hung to his waist. I should have known it was you on my ship. Who else but a Jedi? Who else but Raylan Drur? I learned such things from you. He shook his head, pointed to Masasi corpse with a toe. It seems long ago now. You destroyed every life form on that moon. You learned nothing from me. Sace laughed, the sound fat with contempt. I learned much from you, but it was not what you sought to teach. You should not have come here, Raylan, but then you were the fool. There are many things I should not have done. Sace's eyes narrowed at that. Shouts carried from the 3 corridors that opened onto the chamber. Rowan said, Your servants will arrive soon. Sace raised a clawed hand and the blast doors closed, one after another, blocking the corridors from which Rowan had heard the sounds of pursuit. This is between us, and is long overdue. Do you agree? They approached each other, circled at 4 paces, lightsabers blazing. Sace was the taller between them, but the physically stronger. But Rowan was faster. I do. Rowan's chrono continued his countdown. 33 seconds. I have missed your company from time to time, Sace said, and Rowan heard sincerity in the words. You have chosen a lonely path, Sace. It is never too late to turn away. Sace smiled around his horns, an expression that did not reach his eyes. And the hollowness of the expression reminded Rowan of the gulf between the natures of his first Padawan and his second. You have chosen the lonely path. The Jedi teach denial of self. That is their weakness. No sentient can long abide that. The Sith embrace the self, and therein lies their strength. You understand so little, Rowan said. The Jedi teach the interdependence of life, the understanding that all is connected. A flash of anger animated in Sace's eyes, and he spit at Rowan's feet. A lie. You tried to steal what is best in me, to make me as empty as you. Rowan sneered, but Sace bored deeper. When is the last time you felt anything with passion? When is the last time you laughed, Rowan? Felt a woman's touch? When? The words cut close to the bone, echoing as they did. Rowan's own thoughts about his training of Jeff. Sace must have seen it in Rowan's expression. Ah, I see you thought of these matters yourself. And you were right to think them. It is never too late for you to learn wisdom. Join me, Rowan. I will present you to Master Saydam myself. I think not, Rowan said. Very well, Sace answered. He reached down to a pouch in his belt. May I? Rowan knew what he would draw forth and nodded. Sace removed a white memory mask from the pouch, placed it before his face. It adhered, shaping itself into a likeness of the skull of an Urkush, one of the largest predators on Kali. You used to wear a mask of real bone, Rowan said. I reserve that now for only a special prey, Sace said, and attacked. The present, 41.5 years after the Battle of Yavin. Jaden's ship emerged from hyperspace, and the Navicom automatically removed the tint of his cockpit window while R6 confirmed coordinates. Jaden checked the readout. They'd had a good jump and re entered real space at the edge of the unknown regions. Well done, R6. Ahead, Voss spun through space, night side facing out. He saw an old WeatherSat and ComSat in orbit. Like many planets so far out in the rim, Voss had no orbital dock and processing station, no planetary defenses, no sign of galactic alliance bureaucracy at all. The population of Voss was on its own. He felt a sudden overwhelming impulse to throw away everything and start anew on some wild, independent backworld, like Voss, free of rules and obligations. But he had had enough self-awareness to recognize the feeling for what it was, a desire to run away from his old life, and not a desire to run to a new one. He engaged the ion engines on his customized Z-95 and sped around the planet, outpacing its spin, chasing the day, until he saw the system star crest the horizon line. Put in geosynchronous orbit, R6, he said, and the droid complied. Jaden stared out the cockpit's window. As the planet rotated into day, light filled the cockpit and washed over the planet's surface by increments, unveiling a quilt of clouds floating over the red, orange, and tan of vast deserts, the blue smear of an ocean, the spine of a mountain range that ran the length of the main continent. To Jaden, it was like watching the slow reveal a masterful work of art, a sculpture of land and water, wondrous in its lonely whirling trek through the emptiness of space. He always tried to see a starcast from orbit before setting foot on a planet. He wasn't sure why. Maybe he wanted to see every world in its best light before putting down on its surface. Unbidden, he recalled the starcast over Corellia that he'd seen from a viewport aboard Centerpoint Station, and he and his strike force had moved through the metal maze of its corridors. He dismissed the memory quickly, pained by the realization that his actions on Centerpoint had polluted even this, one of the small pleasures he had long enjoyed. Frowning, he looked out the cockpit past Faust and into the field of the stars that dotted the unknown regions. There be dragons, he said, smiling. R6 beeped a question. Something Kyle once said to me, Jaden explained. What you see can be found in the black hole on Faust. Faust's largest population center was Farpoint. He would start there, keep an ear to the ground, and try to figure out how something could start in the lightlessness of a black hole. He'd pose as a salvager with an old Imperial era Hulk's sell for scrap. The fact that he piloted a Z-95 would add credibility to his claim. Why do I fly an old Z-95, R6? The droid beeped and whistled in answer, though Jaden needed none. He flew the Z-95 for the same reasons he still bore an old lightsaber in the small of his back. R6 set the comm to standard planetary control frequency. R6 chirped when it was done. Farpoint control, this is Far Wanderer. Requesting permission to land. A long pause and the crackle of static answered his request. Before he could repeat it, the planetary control finally answered in basic. Far Wanderer, permission granted. Coordinates for the yard are being transmitted to you now. What is that, a Z-95? How'd you get a hyperspace sled to stay anchored to that old girl? We didn't know that these antiques still flew. Still flies, Farpoint Control, but it isn't always pretty. Laughter carried over the channel. Bring that bird in. Predator settled into orbit over Faust, and Cal took in the planet. It was covered with great swaths of desert, stretches of tan and brown bisected by gashes of reds and smudges of black, made the surface look scarred, bruised, wounded. He hovered over it for a time, his ship invisible to the meager scanning technology available to those on world. He studied the planet's specs on his console a final time. Apart from a few isolated settlements on the edge of the deserts, the planet had only one main population center, Farpoint, with a transient population of perhaps 3,500 sentients. He frowned, thinking that he would have to take care to keep his feeding discreet in such a small settlement. On the other hand, the small population limited the target of his inquiry. With his talents, he would be able to gather information rapidly. In his mind's eye, he saw the image Warlock had burned into his brain, The icy moon hanging against the backdrop of the blue gas giant, its sky on fire. He stared past Faust out at the trackless systems of the unknown regions. The moon could be anywhere. Warlock had demanded that he look for a sign. Kale had another idea. He intended to look for a Jedi, thinking of the rich soup of a Jedi caused by his feeders to roll in their cheek sacks. Thinking of the soup of that one who would bring him revelation caused him to drool. He stared down at the planet of the line of night as light of night crept across its surface, swallowing the desert's darkness. I am a ghost, he said.